5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Hello, everybody. I'm Dear Myrtle, your friend in genealogy, and welcome to the Scotland Genealogy Study Group session today. Our instructor and mentor is Claire V. Brissenbanks. She's got a lot of letters after her name. That means she's an accredited genealogist. You have a bachelor's degree in what is that, Claire? Tell me about that.
Bachelor's degree is in computer information systems, which was programming and networking,
Yes.
taking a computer apart and building it.
Yes. Okay. And then now we're down to what is the MLIS, Master of Library Information Science. Is that correct?
Yep. So that's a library science and information science degree together. So it's a double master's.
She's been a busy girl, folks. And we've got Cousin Russ on tap. He's going to bring your comments in. Russ, last week we noticed a lot of interactivity with those who are attending. And we will be looking forward to you all posting your comments and links and sharing with us in this learning experience. Also on the panel, we've got David Robesson, one of our usual suspects, along with Hilary Gadsby, John Laws, and finally we get to see the face of Billy Wallace, who he's in Edinburgh, Scotland. And Billy, you have a special poem for us today. Want to take it away, Billy?
Thank you, Pat. Yeah, this one was written in the 1960s, and it's a light-hearted look at Scotland's influence on the world.
Yes.
So here we go. The average Englishman, in the home he calls his castle, slips into his national costume, a shabby raincoat patented by chemist Charles Mackintosh from Glasgow, Scotland. En route to his office, he strides along the English lane, surfaced by John McAdam of Ayr in Scotland. He drives an English car fitted with tyres invented by John Boyd Dunlop, a veterinary surgeon of Dreghorn in Scotland. At the office he receives the mail bearing adhesive stamps invented by John Chalmers, a bookseller and printer of Dundee, Scotland. He watches the news on television, an invention of John Logie Baird of Helensburgh, and hears an item about the US Navy, founded, strangely enough, by Paul Jones of Kirkbean, Scotland.
True.
Nowhere can an Englishman turn to escape the ingenuity of the Scots. He has by now been reminded too much of Scotland, and in desperation he picks up the Bible, only to find that the first man mentioned in the good book is a Scot, King James VI, who authorised its translation. He can take to drink, but the Scots make the best in the world, which is whisky without an E. Take a rifle and end it all. But the breech-loading rifle was invented by Captain Patrick Ferguson of Pitfours, Scotland. If he escaped death, he could find himself on an operating table, injected with penicillin, discovered by Sir Alexander Fleming of Darvel, Scotland, and given chloroform, an anaesthetic discovered by Sir James Young Simpson, obstetrician and gynaecologist of Bathgate, Scotland, which Bathgate's quite near John's, not in Edinburgh. Out of the anaesthetic, he would find no comfort in learning that he was as safe as the Bank of England, founded by William Patterson of Dumfries, Scotland. Perhaps his only remaining hope would be to get a transfusion of good Scottish blood, which would entitle him to ask, "Wha's like is? Damn few, and they're all dead." Thank you.
Bravo! Bravo! We're already getting feedback from the community. Let's see what they're saying, Cousin Russ. This is so cool.
Kate says, "Yay, great, good to see you on the panel, Billy Wallace." And Betty Lou says, "Love the accent, Billy Wallace."
Oh, totally. Yeah, so with that bit of Scottish bravado provided in his native accent, we're going to go forward thanks to Billy today. Claire, we're going to talk about, I'm going to throw this to you. We have a thing to share. Cousin Russ will share first. That link to tracing immigrant ancestors, it's an outline, just as an add-on to last week's session where we discussed the push-pull factors. Now you have a question for us, Claire. What is that question?
If you're just starting to do Scottish research, where do you think you'd start first? What record set do you think you'd go to?
Well, I think I can only compare and contrast what I know.
Right. So what kind of records do you think from what you know,
Well, aside from family records, I think I look at census records first because then do you have it in Scotland every 10 years like we do here in the United States?
They did. They had the Scotland census was done every 10 years. With the, if you look in the actual record selection table that we created, and
I'll pull it up.
the first one being 1801, and up to 1831 were mostly just listings, early listings, similar to our 1790 and up to 1840 census records. And that is a PDF file from a library at the Scotland's People's Central Library, and you can actually request census records from what's available. If you go there, Pat, that would be great, so they can actually see it. They actually have the transcripts and photocopies of some of the surviving censuses between that time period.
Okay, and I see that they, well, that must be the MT and the SH in front of their numbers here. That must just be how they catalog and file things.
I would say that's part of their system. I've not had the pleasure of being there. Maybe, Billy, have you ever been to this library?
Yes. In the census, each enumerator had an area which was coded, so they actually respond to codes. I've got a couple of the tables of the codes that I can share with folk later on. In fact, what we'll do is I'll email you, and if you want to add it to the doc.
Well, that would be wonderful.
If you do a Google search for census codes for the UK, codes, CODES
of the UK.
Yeah,
Okay.
that should bring it up.
Okay, so UK Data Service Census about census support. Is that what we're talking
You'll
about?
get some of it there, yeah.
Okay. Let me give you this link, Russ. Okay, got it.
You can also get more information from relevant censuses there. They tend to be the more modern ones.
Yes.
But the MTSH are codes for the areas, as are the numbers.
Okay. All right, we get it. Boy, Russ, we're so lucky to have all this help here.
I know. I think it's fabulous.
All right. So we go all the way up to 1940 in the United States.
But they don't go up that far in Scotland. They go to 1911. There's a 100-year ruling for that.
And we have 72 years here.
Right. So we won't see one until the next one will be 1921, and that will be in the year 2021. And I'm not sure if there'll be one after that. I know that there's a break because of World War II. So I don't know if that affects the census, the Scotland ones like it does. It's going to affect the English. Hillary, are you aware of that as far as the record set coming up for the next one released? How it's affected with the war, what ones will be released?
I think it's just going to be, I think the only one we've got is the 1921. 31, there won't be one.
Right.
Yes.
And I think you're relying on a lot of the ones that I think Fima Pass are going to release something for. They did a survey during the war. I think they're going to rely on some of that to help with that area. But
so it's like a census substitute kind of a thing.
Yeah. But other than that, I think we're going quite way into the future before things are released. Most of us probably won't see it.
All right, well, so since the most recent census is that 1911, while you're pulling that up, pulling a sample up, Claire, we're going to remind people about this Google Docs. And Cousin Russ, this is all your fault, isn't it?
Yeah,
Fabulous resource.
I put the link in the community a minute ago.
Yeah, so that you may remember from our beginning genealogy study group, we liked working with this where the cover is actually that circle of research that we go through. Since you bring up that share screen, Claire, I'll flip the camera over to you.
Okay, you can share it. I've got it up there. I'm just gonna hopefully can blow it up. I want them to see how it comes up.
You're not sharing the screen.
Right.
Let's see.
Okay. And so these first few tabs here are those that were created by Russ, but now we get into these very specific Scotland record links. So if we were going to go to the 1911 Scottish census, it takes us directly to a very important website. And Claire's pulled that up. It looks good, Claire. Let me flip the camera over to you.
Yeah, I hope it does. I'm going to try and blow. I want them to see what they come to when they sign in and stuff.
All right, so what is scotlandspeople.gov.uk all about?
That is the organization that is digitizing the government records for Scotland. They've signed a contract and they're bringing all of the records as quickly. The building, they actually have a building right next to the Scottish Research Centre and the archives and things, the National Archives. So it's fabulous, and they're scanning every single day, I would say, but they will slowly bring more and more records to online as they go, because a lot of records are just not available unless you're in Scotland.
You know, while we're looking at Scotland's people, I would like to compliment the government of Scotland for being so progressive as to recognize they need to preserve these old documents. And years ago, I heard about Scotland's people because of Cindy Ingle, from Cindy's List, CYNDIS list.com. But when you look at the fact that they've got not only the census records, which we're talking about today, but they have marriage bans and births and baptisms, death and burial. You scroll down below, they've got wills and testaments, the coat of arms. What are valuation rolls? Just in a sentence or two. Are those like tax rolls?
Those are land valuations.
Oh, like hearth taxes and things like that, and over in
similar to Ireland.
Okay, got it. All right, we've got something from the community, and then we'll come right back to you, Claire, and we'll look at your screen.
No problem.
Barbara says I use Scotland's people quite a bit, and Christine answered your question about 1941. There was no census taken in 1941 due to the war.
That's just
incredible. That's what we thought, but we weren't 100% sure.
Well, good. Okay, so now we're looking directly on your screen, Claire, and you have logged in. Now, how do you belong to Scotland's people? Is this a pay-per-view, or do you pay an annual fee? Tell us about this website, because you got to pay the piper.
You do, and it's well worth it. You actually, I'm logged in right now, but you can actually create an account. There's no charge to create the account.
Yes.
And then you buy credits, and
yes.
What's really nice is that every single item that you go look at,
yes,
and they keep it forever. So, for instance, I have viewed images here in previous searches.
Yes.
So all of those are kept. So I can go back and look at anything that I've actually paid for already, that I don't lose it once I've seen it.
Okay, so if you hadn't downloaded it yet, because I recommend everybody have their own copy of each of these essential documents proving family relationships. It's there kind of like, it's sort of like the shoebox over at Ancestry, I guess, where it's just all in there together, right? It's not pedigree based.
No, it's just the actual documents, and you can put them in order by the type of document. You can put them in order by family last name, or you can just let them sit there and they're in order by the date that you actually did it. And so
Okay.
it costs you can buy 30 credits at a time, or double that if you want, or even more. And it's not that expensive. We're talking like $12,
All right.
12,
And
$13.
now for those of us here in the US, one of our big questions is what about the exchange rate? Is there any problem with that? Because we used to have a problem when we send away for things. We had to go to the bank and get these little notes, and it was a problem because of the exchange rate. But did you just use your card or what?
I use my credit card, and that's all done through the credit card. And usually it comes up like 10 cents, 12 cents, 11 cents. I mean, it's minor. I
Yeah,
mean,
for the fee.
it's like I said, and if I got on an airplane to Scotland, it would cost a lot more.
Oh, for sure. So basically, once I find out that I have a Scottish ancestor, this is probably one of our two go-to places to get the meat of our work done.
Right. My recommendation is do all you can on Ancestry, because Ancestry has a lot of the transcriptions. Do
Oh,
everything, same thing with Family Search, but 1911 census is not available except for here.
all right. So transcripts, that means it's not the full, it is the full document, transcribed word for word, as opposed to an abstract.
Right. It's just a transcript. It's a listing of what they found,
Okay, so
depending on the form. Now, if the form includes all the things, which I doubt it does,
yes.
usually I think it just has the name and maybe a birth date or a year of birth, or
Hmm.
it has some information, but it doesn't have everything that's actually on that census record.
Hmm. Okay. Got something from the community and then back to Claire.
Sure. Rachel says Scotland's people make me jealous. The amount of information that's is available is incredible.
All right, so talk to me about the efficacy. I mean, most of us, Claire, who are doing research, where's my mouse here? Most of us have, we know people that lived in the 20th century. We typically lived in the 20th century, although I might have some 15-year-olds that just barely made the cut only to the 21st century. Um, but we need to work with the most recent record set, the most recent generations, that in this case it would be 1911 census. And so Census Day, I hear, was the 2nd of April. It was a Sunday. Talk to us about what you see in those columns, because you're right, the columns are a little bit small, but you can read the,
I'm going to bring it up.
yeah.
I just want them to see what it's like when they actually
Ah,
come to, this is when you actually click on the document,
yes,
this is the first page you see. So
yes.
then you can click here and bring it up, make it bigger,
Zoom in, okay.
and then move this around.
All right, just drag and drop it around.
Right, and so this is where Billy is in our dear Edinburgh, which is really nice.
Yes.
And so this tells us the actual parish that they're at.
Mm-hmm.
And so it tells you the district. It just has the same kind of the top section like we would in our U.S. Census records.
Okay, so it's identifying the locality as specifically as possible. And parish in this case also represents an ecclesiastical jurisdiction, does it not? Or am I incorrect on that?
I think it's a civil.
Okay, so it's sort of like Louisiana that has parishes.
Right. See, they've crossed out the ecclesiastical.
Yes, yes.
So I think this is a civil. I think we have a tendency. I don't know about you, but personally, you see something that says Saint Michael, you automatically think of a church. But in
Right,
this case, it's a civil. I believe it's a civil parish.
right. Okay. All right. So tell us more about what information, what have you got?
Well, this actually gives you the actual street. Again, it has the number of the, let me bring that up just a smidgen here. This says the schedule. So this would be when the census taker was recording it, this would be the order they did it in.
Oh, like household number on our census records in
Correct.
the United States.
And so this person was living at 255 Gorgie Road.
Yes.
And then it doesn't have a house number here, but it tells you that this is Alexander Banks. This is my husband's grandfather.
Okay.
Oh, and so his family here, a lot of children. And then
wait, say, I can't see on my little screen because I do have my new computer, but they haven't hooked it up yet. So I'm not looking on my big screen. So you put the name and surname, and then do they actually say husband?
Right. This is on a page 2 because there is a page before.
Oh,
this is the son. This is son, daughter, son. So it does give the relationship, like we do in the U.S., to the head of the household. Okay. So then it tells you their ages and whether they were married. Of course, if they're not, it tells you that there's some codes there. So it says single, married. So this is single because they're young teenagers. And then this goes over. It tells you what they're doing. So he was an apprentice painter. He actually became a very good painter, and used to paint the different signs when he moved and immigrated to Australia. So, but he's a painter and a decorator. And it says that he's a worker, and then it says his birthplace, which is very important. So but the birthplace is way over. It's the very last thing.
So just like we've learned in our U.S. Census record research, this is for you and me, David Robesson and Cousin Russ. We need to go and look at the big picture, not just the first few columns on that left-sided page. We need to go all the way across. When it says birthplace, I can't read that just on my screen. Could you tell me what it says? Because I want to know how detailed it is.
I'll bring it up. It's just Edinburgh.
Okay. So that's enough. It would give us a place to look for vital record.
Right.
Oh, now I can see it really well.
Yeah, I just blew it up a little more. Sorry.
Yeah, no.
But what it is, I'm surprised because, this one here, if you go back to the ages, the 16-year-old is working in the laundry, and the 13-year-old's in school.
Oh, and look how they, aside from saying son or daughter, they have a different column for the age of the male versus the female. So
right, they have the males and the females here.
Okay, very interesting. Now, anybody on the panel have a comment to make about this census? I can't believe Billy doesn't have something to say.
Yeah, I got one.
Okay, John Laws, go for it.
Do be aware of occupation. Because when you look at the occupation, this guy, he may say that he's working for himself, or I'll say worker. He's working for somebody else.
Yes.
Farmer in own right.
Let's see if there's any others here.
Yeah, you'll see. They'll say there's a letterpress machine man.
Yep. There's an iron molder. I'll look at this one, a locomotive storekeeper. And the name of the business.
And that also gives you an indication. He worked for the Caledonian Railway. Now, that also gives you an indication of the financial position of the neighbourhood.
Oh, okay, yes.
And the type of workers that lived in the area. And obviously sons often follow father's occupation.
All right. We've got a comment from the community that I'd like to talk about.
Sure. Carrie says, I just have a problem with the source information provided by Scotland's People's document. They don't really help with evidence explained type of citation, so you have to really search to find where the document you buy comes from. And I have another comment from Carrie in a second. I'll just leave this here for a minute.
Okay, yeah, let's talk about that, Claire.
Okay, so right at the top, they give you the copyright image. They tell you the date. That's the date that I actually, when I
viewed
got it,
it.
1911. But
Yes.
she is correct. They're coding. This is the code. If you, I don't know, we haven't talked about England, but on England they have codes on the sides of each page. So
Yes.
this is what they have. But it is very difficult to find out. Okay, so where do I go to find more information? What has this person done to find that information? Be curious to find that out.
Well, so if we let's back it up even one step more. We're looking at an online or a digital image of a document that's in the possession of the Scotland government. So what are the elements of a citation that we should be including? I want to hear this from the members of the community, and I want to hear this from panelists. First of all, we've got to say what it is. I love the way Dr. Jones says it, Cousin Russ. Let me pull up.
If you could do that, that would be helpful, Pat.
Yes, yes. So what is it?
What am I looking at, and where did I get it from?
Yes, so let's do that. We got it. So it's the Crown copy. Now,
Yep.
does that
Lem-
mean that there could be a local copy we could have looked at, but we're not in this case? It says Crown copyright. All right. And all of that text at the top was generated by the website to put there in addition to that image itself.
Right. So this is their reference right here.
And their reference is that 1.1, and is that also referenced in the, no, it's not referenced in the URL. So we've got to say that it is the 1911 Scotland census, and then which household is it?
Oh, this is the Banks household.
All right, and the Banks, you said this was page 2.
This was page 2.
It would be the father's name, the head of household name.
Yep.
And then we would have to say, what would we say next, guys? I mean, what are some of these elements? I don't even care what order they're in. I just want them there.
Line numbers.
Okay, so that goes toward the end. Line number what?
You've got the GROS is the starting point for General Records Office Scotland.
Right.
Oh, but we don't.
And I think this 685, this is your reference from the General Record Office right here.
But we don't know that as the U.S. researcher. We don't know what GROS means. So you can see the challenge that we have. So,
usually they put GROS on the certificate, then the serial number for the certificate.
Let's look at the top of that page. And what is, page 28.
Yep, right here.
Page 28, and we're talking Edinburgh.
Edinburgh is and that's the place, Gorgie, that's the ward.
That's page 28 of his enumeration book.
Yes.
Right.
You need to know that page. And then in parentheses, or in we have to put our date of access, but we also have to put Scotland's people. Now, when you look at the URL that's at the top, we really take the root of it, which is scotlandspeople.gov.uk. We're used to seeing Elizabeth. That's fine. We're doing just fine.
Okay.
And that's very similar. We're seeing that we're doing it at familysearch.org. We're not giving the very lengthy URL for a specific image. Now at Scotland's People, they're not giving us a very lengthy URL at the top that's unique. So the type of citations that Elizabeth Mills has us do in Evidence Explained are not, they're only requiring the root, the main website. Now, if we took all of these elements that we just listed and we put them in some sort of order as a citation, people would be able to get here and find this image.
Is there any notation at the bottom of the page?
Oh, Claire? Let's look at that and see.
Let's see, because I don't think. Okay, that's the whole document there.
Off the edge. Does it
Yeah.
go off the edge?
That's the edge.
Oh,
Hold
there.
There's
on.
the middle.
There's the middle.
I'm so
Um,
glad we're exploring this together.
Well, these are things we need to, because we
some,
have to have documentation. It just has the same number on the other side, so that
yeah.
means at least that
Um,
makes it a little bit easier. But other
Oh,
than that,
that's interesting. That's a 28, even though we would think it might be 28 and 29. You got something else from our Christine.
that would be great.
Yeah, Christine says source citation is the black lettering at the top of each document, including the record number and the date you retrieved it.
Okay,
Right.
so you're saying, can you go to the top of the page? I want you to demonstrate this for me because I'm not there. I am on the main page for 1911. Can you actually copy and paste that? It is not selectable.
No.
it's not selectable.
Oh, heaven help us. The keep going.
So this is
Let's
it.
go to the left or to the right. Yeah, keep
Right. So
going.
there's census. And see, this here tells
So
me
they're saying 1911 space
685. This
slash.
is the general GRO reference right here.
All right, but that's not labeled as GROS.
No, it's not.
And I now have a new term, guys. GROS, General Record Office, Scotland. Okay, so that would have to be included.
Right.
And so we can actually construe it that way. You know, I haven't looked in the third edition. I'll do that. Let me mention there was a penalty if there was a penalty for non-compliance. I'm reading here on this helpful page of Scotland's people. Let me share my screen. At least they're telling us, boy, they do need to have a citation specialist come work for them, don't they, guys?
They certainly do.
All right. There would be between 2 and 300 houses, assuming that the enumerator did not have to travel more than 15 miles to visit each house. And if it was a large institution with about 100 people, then that would be enumerated on its own. Let me zoom in here. But that's interesting. Non-compliance. So there's the differences between the 1901, the earlier census. Marriage. If we were on the page that showed the mother in the family, it could tell how many children she had.
And I was going to point that out before we finished.
Oh, okay.
There was one on there right underneath us that showed that.
Here's a quote from, this is the actual penalty for offenses. Penalty for non-completion, £5, up to £5.
A lot of money.
Yeah, and in 1911, that was really, really a lot of money. Look at all that great technical terms stuff I'm using. Okay, so we're back to you, Claire. Anything else before we go to the 1901?
I just wanted to point out one of the things that, because I was on another that there's a section here on this particular next family. We have a Robert Blair and a Janet Blair, and the number of people in the household are 7. Notice it says, it's interesting, rooms with 1 or more windows. So I assume there's a reason for these things. But this is the age. It says that they, of course, are married. The duration of the marriage is 14 years. And the number of children she's had that are living, were born alive, were 5, and that are still living is 5. And sometimes they lose a child, so that's why they ask that. And they do that also in the 1900 census for United States.
Okay. Yes, they do. All right, let's go to the 1901 and see what we come up with. And I'm getting some feedback. If y'all could mute yourself when you're not speaking.
Billy, please mute yourself.
Yeah.
You can hear like an airplane kind of a sound.
Could I ask one question about the citation?
Yes.
Since we're looking at this online, and this is just a hyper fussy thing, but shouldn't we also describe it as a digital image?
Yes.
That was found I didn't hear that mentioned, or maybe I did.
Good
I wasn't
point.
supposed
That's
to.
a good point. Precisely. All right.
Because it's not the actual book that you're got in front of you. So.
Right. Well, and I think it's implied by having put the URL that you viewed it at scotlandspeople.gov.uk,
Can
but it certainly doesn't hurt to. You can see I have a slightly looser view of citations. I ascribe to her practices. And I may not get my citations in the right order if I were to do it off the top of my head versus what might be prompted by my genealogy management software.
may
Okay,
I put an input there, Pat? If
yes.
I don't say about this particular census, but in certain instances, if you go to page 1, you'll get the description of the location, and that may give a code. I don't know. And some documents you get the back cover and the front cover.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it depends on the census and what what the prerogative was for filming it, of course.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So are these digitized from microfilm?
I would assume they are.
Yeah.
This is the 1901 census that we're
Okay.
looking at for William
I think, I'm
McEwen.
sorry, Claire, but I don't think so
No?
because they're too good an image.
Where do you think they came from? The actual books?
I think they came from the actual books. If they came from microfilm, it's so scratched.
Oh.
Microfilm has been scratched and scratched and scratched over
Well, I
years.
wonder if they have it like a master copy, like they do in Salt Lake.
Maybe they
Well,
have. Maybe they have.
also that first image
I've
we were
never seen
looking
it.
at had color.
Oh,
The
good
paper was
point.
Okay, I
tan, and you
think the
could see the
19
blue ink
yeah,
and
I
all
think
that.
that I don't think the 1911 were ever filmed, which is why we do not have a copy of them in Salt Lake or I think that might have been the originals.
All right, we have something from Hillary. Hillary, do you want to tell us about the parish and civil record naming?
Yeah, well, a lot of the ecclesiastical parishes and that were in existence before
Mm-hmm.
they introduced things like civil registration in either England, Wales, Scotland, anywhere in the UK,
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of the times they would have taken the same area that was an ecclesiastical area as being a civil area, so which would explain why we got the church names on the parishes and things.
Mm-hmm. I'm looking at Evidence Explained version 3 edition, third edition, and starting on page well, they're all over the book, actually. Parish Registers, Scotland's People website. I'm going to turn to that while you all continue this discussion with the 1901 and see what I can give you in the way of citation suggestions from Miss Mills. Okay, Claire, talk to us about the 1901.
Well, if we notice the 1901 is different. They changed it in the 1911 to ask more questions. And so here again you have the necessary, this one here I had downloaded from Scotland's People, so it still has the Crown copyright image. This tells you the date that I downloaded. It was in 2010, February, and it even has the time, But there's your the citation again, 1901 census 1901, and this is that GROS number that is from the General Record Office of Scotland. And so this could have actually been taken from the originals. I don't know for sure. It gives you the civil parish, the parish ward, the municipal, has all of the same, but it's all on one page, whereas the 1911 was stretched over two. So there's less information. Notice it does have written on it Ecclesiastical Parish of Wem. So someone hand wrote that on the side. Now I don't think you'll get that, but there's a dividing line here. So I don't I don't know how often they do that. Maybe somebody thought that that would be helpful to someone.
We have that in the U.S. where enumerators kind of did their thing.
Right, and we're all grateful for that because that helps us. So then in this case here we have the person number, like the scheduled in the order that they did it. This is 16, 17, 18. This is the road that they were on. In Scotland, They have names on their buildings too. So sometimes, so this says the Connery Bridge Cottage. That means that person's name is most likely stuck on the actual building itself. And so that was so when you go there, sometimes you don't have like we have, like I live at a certain number on a street. They may have the house the name on the house is the designation for that home. And then, of course, it gives you the surname, first name. This one here did again, the surname is on the right instead of the left like in the U.S., providing the relationships, whether they were married, and their age at that point in time.
Boy,
and
somebody did a lot of statistical analysis and crossed through things, didn't they?
Oh, they did.
That's kind of a mess. Can
it makes it really hard.
Little? Zoom in.
Let's see if I can zoom in any bigger.
Can I say that I know somebody who lives in that village?
How's that?
That's perfect. Perfect. Okay. So it's a small world, you're saying, eh? Or at least Scotland. Well, I didn't mean that in a derogatory way.
Yeah, I've got some friends that live in the old schoolhouse.
So Pat, this is what I'm talking about. Here it says road, street, and the number or the name of the house.
Okay.
So this person has a name on the some of them have names on the homes. And actually, when I was visiting there, we had people that had a placard with a name on the home.
Okay, got it.
So this here, you go over, it tells you their profession, the occupation. And again, it tells you where they were born. And so and what I thought was interesting, this is we often ask one of these in one of ours, is whether people are deaf or dumb, blind. I'm not sure what the rest of that is. Let's see if we can pull that up even more.
And Hillary, there's also, as you notice in 1911, there's whether or not they could speak Gaelic or and English. Yes.
Right. So this is Gaelic or English, or Gaelic and English, one or the other. So this person could only speak Gaelic.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. And then these are the deaf and dumb, blind, the lunatic, and imbecile. Of course, we leave that as it is.
We have terrible names for things.
I know.
Well, yes.
Rooms with one or more windows. They're very, very conscious of those. So this will tell you. So now you can go with this information to different civil registers.
Imagine the person below that had 16 rooms in their house. That's huge.
It is
like a local. Well, it says farmer.
He's a farmer, right? It says he's a farmer's daughter. This is.
Claire, I think you're being misleading.
All right, then please enlighten us. That would be wonderful, Billy. No one person knows everything.
No, sure, but if you go over the screen to the left, to the left-hand columns.
Yes, we're going over there. Left, the other side. That's right.
Further. Yeah, a bit further.
That's as far as it goes.
Yeah. Now you said that when you went, the people had house names on the houses. Well, that's a modern thing. We do that now.
Oh, no, they did back then too.
Well,
they did do.
All right. Well, we've got varied experiences, it sounds like.
That's true.
People locally knew where everywhere was. If you didn't belong there.
You wouldn't need to know. Yeah.
No.
All right. Okay, good. Well, I have a report for you.
Wonderful.
I said that I was going to look in the third edition of Elizabeth Shown Mills'
let's get to the top.
Evidence Explained.
Well, let's go to the top and see what it says.
All right. Well, and remember that what she's talking about here are church records. We didn't get to census records yet. But she does an interesting thing because she refers to Scotland's people. Here's what it was for the database or master source. Scotland, period. Quotation, search old parish registers, OPR, births, christenings, and the time period, end quotation. Really? Database, period, that gets in what Dave suggested. Then in italics, Scotland's people, period. Then the URL, scotlandspeople.gov.uk:2007, period. and the website is a master source, is just Scotland period, Scotland's people period, databases period, and then the URL and the year that you looked at it. Interesting concept, isn't that?
Isn't that the year that it was published online?
Um,
Not when
you
you
know,
viewed it.
You're actually right. Thank you for correcting me on that. Because it would say viewed, but how the heck would you know it was published in 2007 or
The
2000?
databases that I've looked at usually will say that somewhere. Now I can't tell
Really?
you about Scotland's people, but I know,
Okay.
but other databases will say when they published it.
It's kind of interesting too because you have some databases on websites where they give you a certain period of years, and that's when you do research, and it was published at a certain time period. Then they update and add more years or more localities within that year range.
But it's that
And
record collection that's when it was initially published,
yeah, and that may be
and
totally incorrect.
well, no, it can be they've added since that
Yeah, but
record
that,
group was initially published.
right, but your citation, yeah,
It we
we're getting
just
down,
like
we're
a,
splitting hairs here. Yeah. Um,
but it's a
okay.
publication date just like a book. That's what I believe that citation says.
Okay. Sounds like a plan to me. All right, let's go look at another census record and see what we've got here.
Do you want the
I,
1891, or do you have
Yeah.
any more questions? Do we have any other
I,
comments from the gallery?
there's a comment that I think is very important, and Carrie put it into the community. She says, "Here is the Scotland's people says about the GRO number." So there's a link to a frequently asked question on what those numbers mean at the top of the page.
Yeah, okay. That is
Um,
very useful. Thank you, Carrie.
Thank you, Carrie, for putting that in. That's wonderful.
yeah, could I just add to that and
Yep.
say that the help section in Scotland's People is really, really good.
Yes.
And it does contain research tools, explanations of, if you go to the fact page in the 1911, it breaks down every code for you on the frequently asked question page.
All right, I'll
There's
go there.
also
I can do it.
research
You go
tools
there,
in.
Pat?
Yes.
All right, if you go there, that'd be great.
Yes.
Uh,
All right, so we'll go to 1911. And we're going to go to, here's the information. And I haven't even logged in. See, I haven't logged in yet.
Oh,
There's
they
the
have a
differences.
tremendous amount of stuff just for looking.
Yeah, so it's
yeah.
really, you can view a sample page of it. You could look at the street index to figure out if the people across the street are part of a different group, etc. Okay, Rachel has a comment, Russ, and I'll try to click on you to move the camera.
Okay, Rachel says, with censuses, also be careful in assuming someone is deceased. I have quite a few who were fishermen and miners who were not living with their families at the time of the census. Ships were enumerated at the port they were located during that time.
Mm-hmm. I think that that's true just about anywhere. Because you couldn't say who was absent, it was who was present in this location on census day. Although then I have my dad's grandmother who appears in 3 households in the U.S. One in Colorado, one in Washington State, and another one in Idaho. I don't know how you can get around that fast in one day in, like 1900.
Okay, did
Anyway.
you find that reference in the Scotland's People, Pat?
No, I haven't got that link.
Which,
I
which,
was the one that Carrie
Mentioned about the
hold
action.
on, I'll give it to you. Hold on a second.
Okay, and then I'll go ahead and share my screen.
That would be wonderful.
This is pretty cool. All right, I will go get it from our chat.
All right.
Thank you. I don't keep as many windows open as other people do, especially when I'm working on this new little laptop, and I don't know how far I can push it without locking up. Okay, there's the Government Record Office of Scotland codes. Are they the same as the references in the new Register House? Yes. So we get registration district, just a brief little description of that. So thank you. Oh, understanding the indexes, search tips, various record groups. Very good. Would that we had this on other websites, such details about it. We do in some, but okay.
All right.
Pull up another census and we'll go from there.
Okay, I'm going to pull up
We
the.
only have, this will probably be the last one we get
Yeah,
into.
that's right. We only have. I got the 1881.
All right, we'll go look at that.
Okay, you'll find it's probably almost identical to the 1891. They didn't change much for a number of them.
Yes.
Let me bring this up to the, I think 50% was good? No, 75.
Yeah.
Okay, so this again, here we have the GROS at the top. That's what we just discussed. And then this is Edinburgh. And this is the same parish. Now, this is that same family, but 20 years earlier. This is James Simpson Banks. This is the father of Alexander. So, as you see here, here's Alexander, the son, down here that we saw.
It's 1 Wheatfield Street?
Yep, that looks like it. Yep, 1 Wheatfield. And they were the 10th family on the street. Okay, and then says that it says that here he is, a plasterer. And here we have this one here. He's a painter and apprentice. And as Billy mentioned about being a worker.
Versus the owner.
Right.
Okay.
And then this is just tells you where they were born, the St. Cuthbert, South Leith. So notice that the differences, they make sure they write down where each person, even if they are a different area. And this one here just has, I think that's 2. That's a lot of people to put in with, but it's rooms with 1 or more windows. So there's two rooms that have windows, and there must be other rooms that don't. But they asked the same thing, but they didn't fill that out. See, none of that's filled out.
Boy, it makes it hard when whoever goes through later and does counting, when they cross things out to remind themselves, yes, I've already counted that family. Because you have a lot of fun trying to read that handwriting.
Right. I mean, this is, again, they have the males on one side, the females on the other side. And so, to me, they could have put those together and just indicated it, but that was the way they just did it, you know. And notice that they did, sometimes people rented a building, so he was living in the home himself. He was not a renter. I mean, or he doesn't say whether he's owning the property, but he lives in the actual home itself.
Okay, so what would be the alternative to living in the house? If you're
I'm sure I'm wondering if some rented, because see, this says uninhabited or building. Maybe Billy knows what the R is for on that one. Well, because we could look it up too.
All right.
Yes, R's for rented.
Yeah, I think that's rented.
Okay.
Oh, it's a B.
Yeah.
It's a building.
Uninhabited. So there could be, so for one household at 1 Wheatfield Street, you could have one home that's inhabited, another older building that's uninhabited. It could have, various outbuildings. Is this what we're thinking that means, folks?
Could be. It could just be in a warehouse or something that wasn't being lived in. Could just be a building.
Okay, yeah. So then the enumerator would come by and they put the address, they'd say it's uninhabited, there'd be no names. Then the second line would start with the next building where it was inhabited and it's at a slightly different address.
Right.
Perfect. So
that makes perfect sense.
That makes much more sense rather than enumerating all the outbuildings and stuff. Okay. Very interesting. And the use of DO for ditto. We see that in the U.S. So
yeah, that's constant throughout for ditto.
What a thing to point out in the larger towns and cities, a lot of the buildings were tenements, multi-level, what you would call brownstone. So you could have maybe 4 levels on a tenement with 2 apartments, 2 families on each level. And that would show up as like number 10 White Street 2/1, meaning the second floor, first flat on the left.
Thank you, Billy. That's wonderful that you did
And
that
of
because
course,
there's no indication of whether they own the home or anything at this point in this particular census.
Yeah.
I still do. There's
It's
still plenty of
oh,
people live in houses like that.
okay. All right, well, let me ask you a question as we wrap this up. This what happened in the green room. I'm going to share my screen because I did have a question from one person, um, and I try to answer your questions if I can, especially when I can do it in Hangout format, don't have to type, because I've got little redheaded girl here knocking at the door and putting her little fingers under the door, little 3-year-old girl. She wants her grandma, and it's almost time. When I designed this logo, and I'll change the screen over here, I was looking for flags from Scotland, and I also found this one in the middle. And tell me what that is, Billy. What is this?
The one in the middle is the Lion Rampant, which is the royal standard for Scotland.
So that means if they're in residence, they must put that flag up on their to indicate that they are there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Originally, it was for the Scottish royal family,
Hmm.
which then sort of became complicated with the Union of the Crowns.
Yes.
Um, but basically, that's the royal standard for
Hmm.
Scotland.
Hmm.
You'll see it above Holyrood Palace when the Queen's in residence. It's the same for Buckingham Palace. The Union Jack only flies there when the Queen's actually present in the building.
All right. What happens if her son comes to visit?
Uh,
Is he considered royalty, or is this strictly for the Queen herself?
I
If he's
think,
representing the Queen, yeah.
He might be
yeah,
all right, so he's representing the Queen, so that might then fly. So this flag stays with the castle as opposed to traveling with the Queen.
yeah,
Okay,
or,
I'm learning.
any of her residencies
Mm-hmm.
in
Very
in
interesting.
Scotland.
Okay, in Scotland. All
Yeah,
right, see, we don't deal with that here. We have Air Force One, and the president arrives, and they do have his presidential seal, facsimile of it, and that is on the front of the podium. Uh,
But our naval forces do have
oh,
a flag as well, not for the captain, but for an admiral or someone in charge of a fleet. So you
the
know
whole fleet.
who, if there's a number of ships in port, one of them will have the senior officer, and there'll be a special pennant on the yard arm of one of those ships. So it is an old tradition that was carried on from Scotland's people
Yeah,
or the
Ah,
UK.
that
yes.
exists with all the forces, Army and Air Force.
It's not so much
But
in the, not at least I'm not
well, not
familiar with the other forces. I know the naval forces. You know who's the boss, who's the senior, who's the senior officer in port.
I
I know
love
who's the
it.
boss. He's the guy sat behind me.
I
Not
hear
now,
you.
but when I was working.
I hear you. Okay, well, we have learned a lot about accessing records, in particular census records, using the website scotlandspeople.gov.uk. You
I
can
have
just
one
type in
question.
Scotland's people.
I have one
Okay, I'm doing
question.
a summary, Russ.
Well, I have a question before, not to be answered today, but is there a census substitute list?
Yes.
And so, what are the list of resources that we might look at while we're waiting for the census records? And we rattled
For
off a bunch of
18,
them that, yeah. So
for
that was just a question for the future.
All right, you know why I think you're saying that? You have been so buried, beautifully buried in city directories. We're probably going to want to know if they have things like that in Scotland. So I think what we're trying to do, and Cousin Russ brought that up, We're trying to compare and contrast what we know about our current research groups, record collections, uh, what those are, and then compare and contrast that with what we're learning about now in Scotland. And that's exactly the process that we go through um, to learn about anything new. And I'm glad that we have this ability to, query John and Hillary and Billy and Claire about these things so that we understand the traditions, the culture, the use of the flags when the Queen is in residence, and what questions were asked in this case on census records.
And
Uh,
also the community. We need the community.
you're absolutely right. And Carrie, especially want to thank you for bringing up the citation issue. I had started out my citation with the 1911 Scotland census, and Elizabeth Shone Mills would just have me put Scotland, period, and go from there. But as long as all those elements are in there, folks, if I were to write up a paragraph in describing what I found in the 1911 and the 1901 census with that citation, you would know that I hadn't traveled to Scotland to look at the records in person. I was using this website. And you would be able to recreate and compare and contrast to see if my copy had been altered or if it actually matched precisely the entry for a family on the Scotland's People website. Okay, we're running out of time, Cousin Russ. You've got the branding ready for me. I try so hard to do this, the beginning and the end. Thank you, Claire, so much for sharing these records with us so we could explore them. Thank you to the members of the panel. Billy, thank you for appearing. This was his first appearance in our Hangouts on Air. We now know what he looks like and love that Scottish accent. Just awesome poem. Thank you. Thank you to Cousin Russ for bringing in the comments from people in the community. And there's nothing left to say, but on behalf of Cousin Russ, I'm Dear Myrtle, your friend in genealogy. Happy family tree climbing, everybody. That's a wrap.